Welcome to the American Civil War. Hello, my friends. Today, we begin a fascinating journey through the history of the American Civil War.
The Civil War was not just another conflict in America's past. It was the defining struggle, the moment that decided what kind of nation the United States would become. The Revolution of 1776 had declared independence, but it left questions unanswered. Could a country built on the promise that all men are created equal endure as the largest slaveholding nation in the world? And would America remain a union or dissolve into a collection of separate states? For decades, the nation tried to balance on that fault line. The North and South were moving in opposite directions. The North built factories, railroads, and cities. The South clung to vast plantations, their wealth built on the backs of enslaved people. Each time new land opened in the West, the argument reignited. Would it be free or slave? Compromises patched things together, but only for a while. The breaking point came with the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. He pledged to keep slavery from spreading west. Southern leaders saw that as a death sentence for their way of life. Even before Lincoln took office, 7 states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederacy. They believed their survival depended on independence, but Lincoln refused to let the Union break apart. If states could leave whenever they pleased, he warned, the very experiment of democracy would fail. The spark came in April 1861. At Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, Confederate guns opened fire on a U.S. garrison. The Union flag was lowered in surrender, and the Civil War had begun. At first, many thought it would be over quickly. But by the end of that first year, nearly 1 million men were in uniform, stretching across a front more than 1,000 miles long. Soon, the names of battlefields became etched into memory. Bull Run, Shiloh, Antietam. The war was like nothing America had ever seen. At Antietam, 22,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. At Gettysburg, the fighting lasted 3 days, leaving over 50,000 casualties. In the West, at Vicksburg, an entire city was starved into submission as Union forces seized control of the Mississippi River. By 1863, the war was about more than preserving the Union. Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate territory to be free. With that, the Union's cause became freedom itself. Nearly 200,000 African Americans, many of them once enslaved, joined the Union Army and Navy. They fought not only for the country's future, but for their own. The Confederacy fought fiercely under the leadership of Robert E. Lee. Time and again, his smaller army turned back larger Union forces. For years, the South held its ground. But in 1864, Ulysses S. Grant took command of all Union armies. Grant believed that victory would only come through relentless pressure. He launched campaign after campaign, forcing Lee to fight without pause. At the same time, General William Tecumseh Sherman marched across Georgia and into the Carolinas, destroying railroads, factories, and supplies. His goal was not just to defeat armies, but to break the South's ability to wage war. The suffering was immense. Towns burned, families fled. Soldiers marched into battle again and again, knowing many would never return. By the spring of 1865, the Confederacy was exhausted. Surrounded and outnumbered, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. One by one, other Confederate armies laid down their arms. The war was over, but the cost was almost beyond comprehension. More than 625,000 Americans were dead. Entire communities were left grieving. Whole regions lay in ruins. And while slavery was abolished, the long struggle for equality had only begun. Yet, out of the devastation, the United States endured. The Union was preserved. The institution of slavery, the great contradiction at the heart of America, was destroyed. And the nation had the chance, as Lincoln said, for a new birth of freedom. The Civil War remains the central event in American history. It tested the country's ideals and reshaped its future. It proved that the United States was not a fragile experiment, but a single nation, indivisible. And it left a legacy of sacrifice that still echoes today. The war settled the question of union and slavery, but it also left us with a challenge: to live up to the promise that all people are created equal. That challenge continues, and that is why the Civil War is remembered. Not as a story of the past, but as a struggle whose meaning still lives with us, here and now.